This is Kelly, and I'm drinking Bullet Bourbon tonight.
This is Eric, and I am also drinking Bullet Bourbon tonight.
This is Cole William Whitlock Gibson, and I'm drinking High West Whiskey Double Rye.
My name is Blaze Fitzgerald Ryan the First, and I'm drinking Pabst Blue Ribbon on the rocks. I got my little whiskey ball here.
And good evening, world. My name is Kevin K. Konachek, and tonight I am drinking Old Forester 86, because bourbon is the answer to questions that really matter.
A24 on the rocks.
Very good. So, today we're going to be talking about A24's second film as we continue our progress of chronologically watching every single movie. This movie is called Ginger and Rosa. Did anybody ever hear of this movie before we decided to watch it?
Nope. And I'm a diehard Christina Hendricks fan. Never heard of it.
Yeah, me either. It follows the story of two teenage best friends that live in England. It mostly follows through the eyes of Ginger, who's a 17-year-old. Ginger and Rosa are best friends that were born in a hospital around the same time, and it follows them at coming to age tale when they kind of start to split and find different interests and go their separate ways. A huge betrayal ends up happening, and we'll get into that more. But on our last episode, Cole was talking about how you're really into the vibes of a movie. So I'd like to ask you for a vibe check.
My vibe check was this movie made me extremely angry and pissed off to the point where I almost did not want to watch it anymore. At the hour mark, I was just like, fuck this movie, fuck all these people. I genuinely hate everything that's happening in this film, and it makes me almost feel ill watching it. I enjoyed the film, but I did not enjoy the vibes of this film at all. It accomplished what it wanted to do. I assume it's just lay out this story of a coming to age film of these two young girls, but fuck some of these characters, which we can get into maybe a little bit after we get some vibe checks for other people, because I probably have a pretty strong opinion about it just made me irrationally angry. So that was my vibe check.
Kevin, how did it make you feel?
Like Cole, there was some emotional roller coasters happening in this film. It was an intense look at some pretty heavy ideas, right? The idea of war, friendship, religion, politics, protest, sex, philosophy, a lot of things that takes you on a different range of emotions. Mix that in with a lighthearted soundtrack and some things that kind of keep it bumping from scene to scene, and it definitely has its highs and its lows. I also found myself getting emotionally invested with certain characters, being angry definitely at Roland's character for certain throughout the whole thing, but also feeling emotional with the ability to kind of empathize with all of the characters. There was some heavy parts, but there was also some lighthearted parts, and I know we'll continue to get into it when we go over our reviews, but I really did enjoy the movie from start to finish, and I definitely feel that the writers and the producers got what they were trying to get across in this film.
Blaze, do you want to weigh in on just first initial thoughts?
So my first initial thoughts, like we said, I had never heard of this movie coming in until, we got on the list of A24 movies in order. So I really didn't know what I was expecting, even with the, I looked at Wikipedia with the, two-sentence synopsis. So the initial thing is, if I could compare it to Charles Swan, the movie we watched last week, I think the beginning they got right as well. I love the opening of, the nuclear bomb and stuff like that. I again, really, the Missile Crisis was kind of like a background noise at the end of the day, but, just the feeling of change and stuff like that. They really did a good way of conveying that, and as you watch the movie, you can understand, why it was set in this period. And then that's my other, initial thoughts was, the period in time was so cool, because we all know, the 1960s America, because we've seen all those movies, but, England was part of the Cold War efforts as well. It was going to affect Europe. It was going to affect everyone. So just the way that everyone, at least in the movie, was on edge about this crisis that could have blown up the world at any time. So I really dug the vibes going into the movie, like the first 10, 15 minutes.
Did anyone notice how, or I don't know if anyone had a problem where literally the first 60 seconds of this film, the first minute, there is not a single sound. I checked my headphones like 3 times because it is absolute silent as there's like title cards and stuff, and then just nuclear bomb, and I was like, oh, okay, so there is sound. But
yeah, and there's so many parties involved with bringing this movie to what it became that it was just on, and we're involved, and we're involved, and we're involved. Eric, I want to hear from you on your first thoughts as well.
So, it started out with Hiroshima, and then fast forwarded us, about 17 years to 1962 London, and I think I just kind of got this vibe of existential dread. When you're a teenager and you first really start like realizing all the horrible things going on in the world, and almost how you and average people are powerless to fix it. You get a lot of those feelings right away, I think, and with all this talk of the Cuban Missile Crisis in the background. But really, what the vibe I got from this movie is, what do you do with all those feelings of existential dread while you're having all these personal problems that are affecting you day to day, and how do you balance the two? That's what I really think the whole film was about, too.
Certainly. I have a list of quite a few different feelings that I got from the movie and everything. A big one of them being war and its effect even in what we would consider the safe areas, and how that affects day-to-day life. And then layered on top of being a older adolescent and coming into adulthood, there's this weird kind of similarity there, where you are safe, but it doesn't feel like it, and anything could shift your whole worldview any second, or end your life at worst. Did anyone else pick up any kind of vibes like that?
Yeah, absolutely. For me, I felt like we were looking at Ginger and Rosa's innocence almost be broken at a certain point in the movie, where they were being kids, they were going out, having fun, drinking, listening to music, having all of those best friend moments, and then all of a sudden it was just like a switch went off. And like you said, it was kind of like that precipice. As the war fever escalated, I feel like the line that those two girls walked from normality to crisis kind of changed. And as soon as things escalated to a point, that's when their relationship fractured and things kind of broke apart.
I also think it was a good backdrop as well, as far as the whole movie, because I really think that as she started to realize, and again, we're definitely going to talk about it, but she learns more truths about her dad and who he actually is. It's how her views of how to handle the protesting of the nuclear bombs also changed into her own path. So I think she's learning, when you're growing up, everything that your parents say is gospel, and then there's that time between 14, 15, 16 where you start having your own thoughts and opinions. And I thought that was a great way that they did the parallels between her dad's philosophical thoughts and who he actually was versus her philosophical thoughts and who she actually was, how they diverged at the end. So yeah, I thought that was a very, very cool way to introduce all the major themes with this World War III background, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. And I want to talk about some of these characters. Another kind of theme that I got from this movie that it was portraying was kind of the children are the adults, and the adults are behaving like selfish children. We're talking about fathers and maybe the absent-mindedness of them at some cases. Cole, I want you to talk about Roland.
I left my notebook where I wrote down it, but like in the big, like in black bold letters, like a crazy person, I just wrote kill.
Is it because you saw there was no foot shots in the movie?
First
and you were
off,
just like,
no foot
scratch out the whole
shots.
thing?
But I just wrote kill Roland because that guy is a piece of garbage. I absolutely hate him. But speaking of fetishes, there was a quote from Roland that makes me think that he is definitely into bondage, which the quote was when he was talking about when they're in the boat. He was talking about there's poetry in spaces, and he said confinement can be utterly beautiful, but only if it's a matter of choice. And I was like, this dude loves bondage for sure. So.
Cole the sex psychologist.
Yeah, so I just break it down, and then guess what? Spoiler alert! I'm sure everyone that's watching this podcast, I'm sure has watched the movie. Spoiler alert! Later that night, he bangs that Rosa, and then everything falls apart. And I fucking hate that guy. But I really wanted Christina Hendricks to just like really clock him in the mouth, but she didn't. Although the slap on Rosa at the end was amazing. That was a very good slap.
If I could,
they did the boat.
Go ahead, Eric.
They did the nasty on the boat the second time they went on the boat, not the first time.
Oh, details, semantics.
Yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
you're right.
I-
You're right.
and so-
You're
I
right.
watched him cry
You're
the
right.
first time and went, that's my fetish, actually.
Yeah, the thing was, I knew that Rosa was 17, so I had to actually like look up in England what the age of consent is, and it's actually 16. So like, it wasn't statutory rape, but it doesn't make it any less creepy for a father to have sex with your daughter's friend.
Yeah.
And I think what I really took away from Roland is that he outwardly has all these high moralistic values. He's a man of civil disobedience, but I think it's all sort of a farce. You know, I think that he just does whatever the hell he pleases. His explanation for this is basically, you know, you only live once, you have to make the most of this life that you can. But really, he just thinks with his dick and not his brain, and he has destroyed his family, and because of all the womanizing he does, he's pretty much destroyed his daughter because he, you know, spends more time with all these women than he does his own daughter, and it leads to a lot of hatred and jealousy from his daughter. Yeah, Kevin?
I think that's very, very true what you said about Roland. The whole time I felt like he was just disingenuous. He was just reading off the things that he writes down in his published journals, that he's just this idea of a protest person. And I didn't get any genuine lines until the very last thing he says in the whole movie, when he apologizes to Ginger and says, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. And I wrote down a note that I felt like that was the first genuine thing that he said, and that everything else, like you said, it was just blowing smoke just for the sake of it. And then the other point I wanted to make is that I thought it was interesting that the director wanted us to know or to feel that there was going to be something between Rosa and Roland, like right off the bat.
Yep.
Like you could tell, like there was that line where Rosa said, goodbye, Ginger's dad. And like I knew immediately right there that was where the movie was going. And the director kind of, you wants that to feel as it's getting progressively more. It infuriates you, right? Your emotions are building because you know it's coming the whole damn time. And then when it happens, it kind of... So I loved that about it. I thought it was really cool to bring us on that journey.
Well, and the thing that made me like irrationally angry was when that was happening, no one like did anything or like called it out, and like Ginger, which, you know, she's again, it's like a coming of age, so it's not necessarily like, but like I just wanted her to just like call him out or just be like, what the fuck, and just but it never happens until it like reached that boiling point. But obviously she's like kind of takes that and pushes it towards the bomb and all of the protests and stuff, instead of actually dealing with that problem until it reaches a boiling point and explodes, right? But yeah,
I think
which is a cool metaphor in itself.
Yeah, and I think the movie did a good job of kind of making us feel like Ginger, where we see these things happening in front of us and we feel uncomfortable, but we're like, surely it won't happen.
Yep.
Right? That's crazy. No way they would do. Oh shit! It's already like way far too gone now.
Well, yeah, it's like what Kevin said. You know, it's that slow burn that like slowly like it lets you digest the whole like relationship like blossoming. You know, like what Kevin said about, you know, goodbye Ginger's dad. Oh, I'm Roland, and then him and the mom break up, and then they go on the boat together, and it's just like you're like, come on, and then Rosa asks her to come on the boat with her and Roland, and that's when, you know, it's already and but to Eric's point, I don't think that like Roland is manipulative on purpose. I think he actually thinks that he's right, and he has that entitlement about himself because he went to jail for protesting World War II. He wrote all these think pieces about, you know, pacifism and stuff like that. So when he manipulates the women in his life, especially, I really think that he thinks that he's coming from a genuine point of view, because when he is in a relationship with Rosa, he doesn't hide it from his daughter. And I don't think he did that, maliciously, but we can all see how flawed of a character he is, even though I think what makes me most angry about him is that he thinks he's doing the right thing. And when everyone else is like, screaming no, it's like, it's the classic toxic manipulative person. He broke his daughter's heart and he thought waking her up at 3 a.m. with dinner was going to like solve everything.
Right, exactly. And then giving the line about how it's love and love is like a siren call. One must surrender. Like somehow like validating his relationship with the 17-year-old girl who happens to be his only daughter's best friend. Like, no, you are believing way too much of your own bullshit.
Yeah, and like with that dinner scene where he comes in at like 2-3 a.m. and like makes her dinner and it's like, I made you dinner, weren't you hungry? And she like obviously was not gonna eat it, but then he's like, what, you're not gonna eat my food? But then she like obviously changes her tune and eats it. But in the same scene earlier where the beautiful Christina Hendricks slaved over a delicious meal for him, made him his favorite pie, and he said nothing. That bastard, that fucking asshole said nothing. But then when Rosa makes a shitty spaghetti, it's delicious. I fucking hate that guy. Christina Hendricks deserves better.
Yeah,
that's the reason why. The whole time it's a Christina Hendricks crush that's driving your hatred of Rosa's character. Got it.
I don't think she's without blame, though, for the way Ginger ended up the way she is. I mean, there was a point where she called her and Rosa sluts, and, she does seem like she has some mental problems of her own. Is she as bad as Roland? No, but she does seem kind of like she's off,
When she started painting again after Rosa moved out, I thought that was very telling of that part of character, like you just said. Like her character all of a sudden heals herself when Rosa moves out, or when Ginger moves out of the house, and I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, so something I was going to say as we were talking about Roland was that we all see his faults immediately, but Ginger is like, I idolize my father, I want to be just like my dad, and that's a huge thing for teenage girls, is like, Dad can do no wrong, and I will do everything to not be like my mom. Well, and we see the faults in both of these parents, but Ginger doesn't really ever come to see anything redeeming of a quality in her own mother.
I think it's because the mom went a roundabout bad way of like, because she used to be a painter, she used to be a free thinker like her daughter, and she got trapped into this world with Roland. And I think, like she goes to high school so they can teach a home ec and stuff like that, and that got Ginger really mad at her. But I think because I think her mom wants her to conform more to like normal society, so she doesn't become a protester, she doesn't fall in love with a Roland type guy, so she doesn't make the same mistakes she does. She just does it the wrong way. Her thinking is right, but her motives were like not the best. Letting her leave for Roland was a really bad call on her part. But, because she wouldn't let her be a kid in her own right, though, because she got mad at her for drinking.
No.
It's almost like she's taking out her anger that, she was trapped in this life. She's taking it out on her daughter. That's kind of the feeling I got from it.
Well, okay, but when she left, she started painting again. Because I think that free spirit was still inside her, but Roland had crushed her down to such, nothing that she didn't want that life for her daughter. So like, you know what I'm saying? She's a cool painter on her own, but when it comes to her daughter, she's more protective and she wants her to live a more mainstream life than the one she's living.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Plus, this was in like the 1960s, and this was like right before the big like feminist movement and stuff, which obviously Ginger was a part of, and I think that was kind of what, because from my understanding as the director, this is like kind of based on her past life and history, but not obviously direct like autobiography, but it's like right at that precipice of like feminist movement and protest and like women joining the workforce and being treated as equals, while her mom is stuck like right at that last line of you get pregnant and you are a mom and you don't have other hobbies, you don't get to do anything else, their husband's not going to help you do anything. And Ginger kind of resented that, but didn't realize that was what was expected of her at that time. Which,
I'm so glad you touched on that, because that's like the first thing that I wrote down as a theme of this movie was like the eve of feminism and women not knowing what was just about to happen for them of their own work and effort. And we have these two characters, Christina Hendricks, who is like, I'm a housewife, I need to get a job, where am I ever gonna find work? And then you have the friend of Ginger's godfathers, who's like, I've been a radical feminist my entire life, and I don't say the word actress. Nothing ends with an S, and she's the most serious, pinpointed person.
Yeah, she was awesome. I liked her.
They talk about the sexual revolution, right? Isn't that like a time point in our history? And that's definitely very, very clear. There was that scene where the girls are trying on their mother's clothing before they go out, and I thought that was interesting too. Like the idea that you're coming of age, you're trying to act older, you're trying to do things for yourself, and it's very interesting to see how well that actually turns out in the movie.
And, the radical feminist friend of Ginger's godfathers, her name was Maybelle, but she's played by Annette Bening. She won a Academy Award for being an American Beauty. So it's really interesting that she took, like, this smaller part in this to place, I think, a pretty crucial character. You know?
Yeah, there were some pretty big players in this film as well. Again, for being like A24 second film. But, I was surprised. Also, I did not know that Ginger, one, was a blonde, and also Dakota Fanning's sister. That blew my mind when I looked that up.
Yeah, let's talk about that a little bit. Elle Fanning, holy cow, she was 13 during the filming of this movie, good. And she absolutely destroyed it. It was such a good performance by her. She was the vehicle that this entire movie needed to work. Without her, this thing doesn't go the way it goes. She's incredible. Her emotions were very raw, very real. I was absolutely blown away by her performance in general, and it made me a big fan. And this was my first experience with her.
I don't like recall her in any other films or TV shows or anything like that, but that end scene where like the boiling point after like she gets like from the arrest and stuff like that, where like the amount of emotion and like how it was very real and raw and almost like seemed like genuine, even though it was acting, which was very impressive.
Yeah, it felt like she was the character we were watching in every single way, shape, and form. She blew me away, for sure. Yeah, something else that I want to touch on is that this movie was written and directed by a woman named Sally Potter. And Cole, you kind of touched on that. It's not an autobiography, but it is similar to her life. She attended Ban the Bomb protests when she was growing up. When she was 13, she remembered going to her first one. And she is a redhead, and it's the reason that Ginger is also a redhead in the film. Elle Fanning was quoted saying, like, it's the first time I've ever not been a blonde in a movie. And I was like, that's very interesting.
Just a quick side note. I'm sorry, before we get way off track, can we talk about that Roland named her Africa?
Yeah. That such a
Was
weird.
That not the biggest fuck you in like the entire like I wanted to touch on that when it started out.
What was it that he said was his reasoning for that?
It was about like
the dark art or the dark something came from Africa.
Beauty or something.
Remember.
Because
the dark some philosophical mumbo jumbo.
Right.
But it's just like, and it was such like a random part. At no point throughout this movie did I think Ginger was not named Ginger until like that point when Bella was just like, so what's your real name, Ginger? And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
And then it's just like Africa. I'm like, I really hate Roland so much. This guy is a pompous prick.
But that also makes you think like nobody was named Ginger in the 1960s. Like if she was clearly a nickname, it wasn't a surname by any stretch of the imagination. Like they must have been at the time, I guess.
Well, I think it goes again to like the whole like the early feminist themes, like, you know, where Ginger, oh, she's a redheaded girl, her name must be Ginger, you know. And then because what the older lady said, you know, at the end was really like resounding when she said, well, when you grow up, you could still be Ginger or you could be Scarlet. You know, and that's like, you know, because Scarlet is a more fiercer red than Ginger, so, you know, like blossom and become yourself. So that was a really good like little like, you know, seeding for, you know, what she's gonna grow up to be. So I don't know, I thought that was really cool.
Definitely. I want to take a total turn and ask Eric what your thoughts were on the use of jazz throughout this movie.
Yeah, jazz. I mean, I think it showed, I don't know, just kind of how hip Ginger was at that time. And I would say that jazz jazz is chaotic, Jazz is improvisation at its finest, and it's talented improvisation. And I don't know if there's a direct parallel here, but Ginger's life is chaotic, and in a way, it's like she is trying to navigate it the best she can. And I'm not sure if that was a conscious choice by the director or if she just wanted to make Ginger seem hip. But in a way, it kind of perfectly suited the soundtrack because there was just points of chaos throughout this whole thing, and the jazz definitely played off of that.
Cool. Did you know?
No, Kevin first.
Okay.
Kevin first.
All right, so the soundtrack was definitely a huge part for me. So as a jazz musician, as somebody who really appreciates a lot of the music that was in this film, I was taking notes as every song came up because I felt that each song was directly picked for the reasons that it was in there. The first one we hear is Take the A-Train by Duke Ellington, and that's one of the biggest jazz standards that was ever created. And it was just kind of conveying, like Eric said, that chaotic feeling, that vehicle of movement. We heard Take 5 by Dave Brubeck. I loved that when she was getting angry, when she first realizes that Rosa is, doing the dirty with her father, she gets up and puts on Tutti Frutti by Little Richard, just kind of distracts herself from it and, ends up getting really drunk with that boy. And then the final thing we heard is Bird Get the Worm by Charlie Parker, which was that really live saxophone piece as she's fleeing in the middle of the night just to get away from the world. And like that chaos, that ridiculous runs, like all of that stuff together was just brilliant. I loved the soundtrack, and I thought it was a huge part of what made this movie awesome.
Yeah, those are both beautiful points. I am not a musician and I have no musical abilities, but the beautiful and talented Christina Hendricks is actually a very good accordion player and can actually play it. It is like an accomplished accordion player, and the fact that she was playing it in the movie, she also played it in Mad Men. She plays it a lot in a lot of shows.
Bonk.
But I like the fact that like they added that into the film as like her playing it late at night and like almost in shame of like another thing like the painting and stuff that she used to like and used to do but can't do it anymore and isn't allowed to do it anymore. But yeah, cool jazz, like it.
That's your one simping pass. You can't say another simp thing again for the rest of the podcast. A beautiful and talented accordion player. That is, come on.
Are you telling me Christina Hendricks is not beautiful and or talented?
I'm just saying.
Because I'll fight.
That's a little bit too much information. I didn't need to know she plays the accordion.
Why not? Do you not care about a woman's hobbies?
In the movie, yeah.
Okay, Roland. I guess you don't care about painting or her hobbies. I guess you should just make you your favorite fucking pie and you just expect it.
Are you a pacifist, Blaze?
That would have been great if one of us were on the podcast and be like, "What are you guys talking about? I loved Roland. He was so smart.
He had good points."
Actually, I was kind of hoping for that.
No.
He made a lot of
shit.
interesting. Yeah.
At first, I was definitely like, "Yo, what if you did have like a free spirit dad like this? How different would life be?" And then it took like until the second scene until it's like, oh, you wouldn't have a dad. You would just have some like friend, and he wouldn't even. Yeah. He didn't even want to be called dad. She goes, I don't have a dad. I have a Roland.
That's the moment. Yep, that's the moment right there. It's like he won't let me call him dad. I was kind of all right. This guy's a piece of shit. I'm done.
What was when you that line towards the end of the film when Rosa tells Ginger that she might be pregnant when they're at the diner, and
Rosa
they were
tells Ginger that.
Well, yeah. So they were at the table and they were talking, and did you guys understand the significance of the line? I'm trying to remember it. It's because she was religious, Rosa was, and she said she doesn't want to do the protest anymore because it's in God's hands. And then Ginger says, then she said something along the lines of like, but then who's in your hands or something like that. And that's when that's when she broke off and ran away. So I don't know. I just thought that was a very interesting line, I guess, and I was kind of dissecting it. But
now that Blaze brought up religion for the first time during this pod, I think that's a really big movement vehicle for this as well. The idea of protesting versus supplicants, right? The idea of religion and God versus the atheism. Many times throughout the film, like during the beginning when they're talking during the lunch between Ginger and her father about Ginger going to church. and showing the rosary that she was wearing as a gift from Rosa. And Roland asks what she thought about it, and she makes a comparison to theater. And I thought that was super interesting as well, a family who has absolutely no attachment to religion versus Rosa, who has everything in religion. So the juxtaposition between the two friends, the atheism versus the theist, it was an absolute compelling part of this entire film. And even at the very end, when they're talking about the 10 Commandments and murder, and Ginger's like, I don't need a book to tell me that murder's bad. Like, that's how I feel as someone who can absolutely relate to how Ginger's feeling. So it was just a really cool sub-theme throughout the whole thing, and I just enjoyed the way that they kind of had that under the surface. It didn't seem like overly important, but it was also really much kind of there for the whole thing.
I think a big part of this movie, too, was, like you were saying, supplicants versus, people actually taking action. It's like Ginger wanted to take action, as the movie progressed, due to nuclear. She was an anti-nuclear war person, a pacifist. She wanted to take action, yet her mom and Rosa were very much like, what can I do about it? Like, I should just focus on my day-to-day life. Then you have Maybella, who is the ultimate activist. And then I think the Godfathers, they were the most leveling force in this whole movie. They were the ones that knew, like, I think they were the guiding light. They were, so thoughtful and loving towards Ginger when she needed it most. And I think they were kind of like the perfect in-between. It's like, no, I'm not going to go, I don't know, get arrested right now. But, all of these worries and they're all very valid for Ginger, They say that as much to the cop, too. Yeah, I want to talk more about their characters, too. They were such a guiding force in this whole movie.
Definitely. I was going to give them the Best Characters of the Movie award.
Mark
goes to the Godfathers.
Mark 2 was my favorite.
Mark 1 and Mark 2. Yeah, there we go.
Right?
And
that was excellent.
That was the funniest part of the movie when they kept calling him Mark 2. Like, that got a general laugh out of me every single time. That was...
There was one line from those two that I highlighted and I wrote down as something that kind of really stuck out to me, is when Ginger was really upset about the whole situation. They kind of go, be a girl a bit longer, you'll be a woman soon enough. Like, she just, like, we got to remember that Ginger's a kid. Throughout this entire thing, she's still a kid who's just not seeing the world for the first time, and her godparents see that, and it was kind of really, really telling that she needed to see that.
Kevin, you and I picked very different quotes to write down and memorize for this podcast.
Well, we need that, right? Opposite approaches.
And the different quotes, I think obviously the most poignant quote is towards the end is, I forgive you. It was when we meet again one day, I will forgive you. She's saying that to Rosa, while other people are, while her dad just said sorry to her. And I don't know. I think the Godfathers, it's hinted that they're together, they're in a relationship. Is there at the very end? Ginger says, I loved you, right? Is that kind of an admission that she actually, had feelings for Rosa? And that's why it even hurt more for her.
So
I don't think so.
I think so, because
No?
at the very beginning of the film, with those two like sitting at the bench and like it looked like they were like I don't know. It seemed like Ginger was very into it, and like that they were gonna like almost like kiss, like they were practicing, like they're gonna go make out with the boys. But Ginger seemed very interested, and I thought the movie was gonna go in that direction, where it was possibly about two young girls who were gay in a time that wasn't necessarily acceptable. But then it like went a completely different direction. But that last line really like pulled back that thought, where I think that it's a possibility, and it seems to hint at it. At least I think so.
It hints at it. Obviously doesn't, like, it's not the point of the movie, but it hints at it, I think.
I know that's a little thing, but when you're looking at the descriptor, like on Showtime, it does put like LGBTQ descriptor on the side, and I can't think of anything else in the movie that
I
was
guess.
The Godfather.
I guess the marks, yeah, you're right, but
Yeah. I'm with Blaze, where I don't think that it was a romantic love.
No,
I think that it is the love that...
She loved her like a sister. She was like the one person that was with
Yeah.
her. That's why they had to show them, growing up together in, a few establishing scenes. So, maybe it seemed more intimate to you guys because they had to like rush it, but I didn't see any like. She loved her as a friend, as a sister, as someone who grew up with her in these times.
Well,
I don't see any love interest or anything like
if
that.
that's the case, then why was like
Yeah.
the girl movie the second on the list of like when I looked up Ginger and Rosa? Just immediately went to girl scene the movie.
Because there's a lot of perverts out there that think that girls can't like love each other as friends without it being more. And I'm not pointing
God.
any fingers or anything.
I
but-
love Eric, but I don't want
I thought
to.
it was
I'm
kinda
pointing
sweet, yeah.
3 fingers.
I never.
Two
I
girls
thought it was
almost
cute,
kissed.
you know?
They
Yeah.
must be gay.
Yeah, okay, this just got.
Well, it was more of the
Fudge, real-
jealousy that she had when Rosa was, making out with these boys. There was definitely
Well, yeah.
a jealousy she had.
She looked-
like before she even, got with her dad.
Right, a jealousy or a confusion, because when they're in the bathtub together, the two of them are reading very different material, and it's the start of their friendship parting away. I think if there was a romantic love, they wouldn't have parted slowly and kind of amicably as they did until the betrayal happens. But like one girl's reading, boys want you to have a bubbly personality, and Ginger's like, how about this great I can't say it because I've had too much bourbon, but how about this great writer? And it's like they just amicably split up. There's no like.
I don't think
pull
Rosa had the
or-
same feelings.
No, I don't
you
think
know?
so either. But what about the scene where they're making out with the boys and Ginger's just like obviously staring at Rosa instead of the boy that she's with?
I take that as a view of inadequacy or confusion.
Yeah, I
Why
think-
is
well,
my
again-
friend
Confusion
into
and
this,
feelings
and I don't care at
towards your
all.
best
Yeah, I think Rosa was into one thing and Ginger was into other things. That's where the coming of age part comes in, where they're splitting up as like who they are as individuals. Like I said, regarding Ginger's dad, how she's like taking on her own path in life. I think Rosa was like, the cool, adventurous, fun friend, but Ginger wanted to be out in the battlefield, these protests. So their ideals weren't the same. So that's why, like Kelly said, like it's probably like an inadequacy of like I should be having this was fun, but I just don't feel it. And Rosa is more of the young woman, I guess, who's going after boys and clothes and stuff like that now, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
But I didn't see any like a love connection outside of
Yeah.
as far as romantically goes.
I did look up if Sally Potter was married, and she is happily married to her husband. So I was hoping that, well, not hoping, but I thought that maybe she was a lesbian, but turns out she's not. So
Sexuality is a spectrum.
Well,
she might have had
I'm not,
experiences when
yeah,
she was
I'm not
younger. You
saying
never
she's-
know. Yeah.
she doesn't.
Yeah, I know. But yeah.
I was hoping that I
yeah.
could use that as an argument, but I couldn't.
In the end, I don't think it's the exact point of the movie.
No, not at
like,
all.
We were talking about all these other themes. I think that's just kind of something that slips into the background there. But yeah.
Well, I think again, we're just kind of like riffing right now. I think the coolest thing, my favorite part about the movie is because we're talking about this missile, the missile crisis that was going on, and all this, and I think at the end, because Christina Hendricks, her character got pregnant as a teenager by Roland, and then towards the end, I guess is it official that Rosa was pregnant? But
It's heavily implied. Yep.
But I think because they showed Hiroshima, in the nuclear explosion. So I think the main theme of the story that I took from it is that history repeats itself, whether in the macro or the micro. Roland is like the superpowers, these pseudo intellectuals that play God, and it ends up burning them. So I think that's the history repeats itself is the main theme is what I got from it, especially the comparing nuclear war to the nucleus of a family. So
Wow, that's pretty.
When Ginger's mom looks at Rosa right after she figured out that Roland and her were sleeping together, Rosa she puts her hand on her stomach like she's guarding her baby, and I think that was a telltale sign that she was actually
I mean,
pregnant.
Christina Hendricks
Oh, yeah,
definitely
100%.
took it that
Yeah.
way because she.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, she went to go try to
Yeah,
kill
I
herself
think she knew.
Yeah.
She knew it. Yeah.
That's a really cool scene of just like non-verbal
Yeah.
communication between the women too, of the hand and the eyes and like all of them hear this message immediately and react accordingly. And I thought that was an amazing scene. That whole confrontation kind of ending, I thought was a really, really well shot scene. Really good, like, thing that we got to. Unlike the previous movie we watched, it all came to something.
Hey,
There was that line where Rosa runs up to Ginger and frantically says, "Ginger, forgive me, please." And like that was so poignant. Like all up until that point, she was, "No, my love is real. My relationship with your father is okay. Everything is wonderful." Until all of a sudden, it's like, "Oh my God, your mom's trying to kill herself because I did this." Like, and then she realizes everything she messed up, and I thought that was really poignant as well.
Yeah.
And we talk about it. We never find out
That's
what
what I was
happens,
gonna
right?
ask.
At the end of the movie. We're just kind of left with that poem, which was so beautiful and really, really, riveting at the end there. But you almost forget that you don't find out the ending there because you're paying attention to kind of that final scene and what she's writing down.
What do you think of that ending? Were you kind of like
I was kind of let
upset by
down.
it, or
I
were
was a
you
little
happy
let
with it?
down. I was let down.
I loved it. I loved it
You
personally.
loved it. See,
I did. I thought that for me. So here's the whole thing for me. At the beginning, we knew she wanted to be a poet, right? That was one of the first things we found out about her. She wanted to be a poet. T.S. Eliot is a huge part throughout the whole thing. Like, there's a little bit throughout the whole movie where that's the major theme. And at the end, she talks about the forgiveness, right? We write down that line, "You dream of everlasting love, not me, because what really matters is to live. And if we do, there will be nothing to forgive." I thought that was just so brilliant in a lot of different ways. And at the end, I already touched on it when Roland says, "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry," and that's his first genuine thing. She doesn't care because it's all about her mom at this point, and as it should be.
Please.
yeah, well, the contrast to what Kevin is saying, I was just so disgusted by Roland the entire film. I really don't think I can forgive him in a last, 5-minute scene where there wasn't really a resolution. Ginger officially made that step towards adulthood. I think that was the big resolution. But as far as the ending kind of left me wanting, which is kind of weird. How we were talking about how it was a movie that showed its cards right from the get go. So the fact that it kind of had an ambiguous ending kind of let me down a little bit at the end.
I don't think we were ever supposed to. I don't think we ever need to forgive Roland, and I don't think we ever should. But I think like the forgiveness of Rosa is like more acceptable and kind of more of where we should go. But I liked the ending because I think it would feel almost like if Christina Hendricks, who I don't actually know her name in the movie, but if
Nat.
if she survived, I felt like it would be kind of like a cop out of like, don't worry, like your mom is still okay and like
Right.
things will be better. And then if she died, I think it would kind of at the same token feel just hollow in a sense too. Like I think the leaving it open to interpretation and kind of ambiguous and leaving us with her poem and her thoughts on the situation, even though like she will forgive Rosa regardless of the outcome, I think is kind of what we should focus on. And I liked it. I liked it. But we all know that Christina Hendricks survived and she's coming home.
And
Eric, go ahead.
yeah, I wanted to touch on he said history repeats itself, and that's definitely like
Yeah, that's a good one.
Hiroshima to the Cuban Missile Crisis, and I think so why the Cuban Missile Crisis was in the background here, why the director decided to put it in this time period. It obviously hit close home to her because she grew up during that too. But I feel like when you're at that age, 16, 17, there's always something going on in the world where you feel this kind of existential dread that I was talking about earlier, and you get to a point like, should I do something about it, or am I just doomed to be helpless? And for me, it was like the Iraq War growing up. Right now it's Russia and the Ukraine, which we're watching this as Russia and the Ukraine is happening, and it's really easy to feel helpless. And I guess what the end, I think, in a way, is saying, maybe my poetry, will be able to, like, at least help me gather my thoughts and, like, deal with this crazy, chaotic world that I live in,
I thought there was one other interesting metaphor to this whole thing at the end there. So that scene where it's that critical mass where she breaks down and has to reveal her secret. And she says, "I'm going to explode." This entire movie's theme is about the atom bomb and this perpetual idea of a nuclear weapon destroying their lives. And I think that Elle Fanning's character, she is the bomb, right? Her secret her secret destroys the life of everyone around her, including herself. If she keeps it a secret, she explodes from the pain, the depression, the isolation, the having to hold her father and her best friend's secret in her hands. But if she reveals it, her mother, her father, her best friend will all be damaged beyond repair, as if someone had dropped a bomb in their lives. And so I think that's a huge, huge part where she's struggling with this idea, like, do I be a pacifist or do I be an activist, or do I preserve my nuclear family's, fragility, or do I explode it because I can't do anything else and I'm a 17-year-old girl? Like, it was really good. I just loved it.
So Kevin, I have a question.
Sure.
So you said you like the ending so much, right? Because of the whole like big poem at the end. So going to Eric's point about how when she was writing poetry, it kind of anchored her own reality. It kind of like when she heard her mom having sex and contrastly Rosa having sex, she would be like writing poems, in her head. Do you think that when she says, "I want to live," live in the moment or whatever, is she like gonna get away from poetry because of that? Is she gonna like break free of the shackles that was like where she was concerned about nuclear war this entire movie, and now she's like, now I'm gonna live. Is she gonna be like less attached to her old way of life, I guess? Does that make sense?
I guess so. I think that moving forward, she's going to actually be more motivated on the war effort than anything else. Kind of seeing how her pacifist father is actually a giant scumbag, and anything that he said or did is no longer really relevant to what her beliefs are. We saw throughout the entire film the divergence between the two, and at the end there truly is the difference between he's willing to go to jail for not doing anything, and she's willing to go to jail for doing something. That's the huge. We see that part. We literally see her go to jail for what she stands up with, and he's now famous for going to jail for not doing anything. And that inaction, I think, is a huge, huge part of why she stands tall at the end.
I didn't even make that connection. That's a really smart connection. Huh.
There we go.
Yeah, well said.
I like that.
Does anyone... I want to get final thoughts, and then we're going to give some ratings.
I guess just one last thing I wanted to say was the guy that plays Roland, he's in another A24 film we're going to watch pretty soon called The Most Violent Year, and he was also in The Many Saints of Newark, which is the Sopranos film. So I'm starting to become more interested in this guy as an actor, and I actually think he did a great job of playing a despicable person in this.
He did.
And I think the acting all around was pretty great. Including definitely Christina Hendricks, definitely Elle Fanning. I think that this was cast extremely well, and
Who played Rosa?
Rosa.
It was a new actress who had actually because in the credits it's introducing the actress's name, so she was her
Alice
first
Englert.
Yes.
film. There you go.
Beat me to it, you son of a bitch.
Pretty good at her role as well, I would say.
She was. Oh my gosh, Kelly! She was in The Power of the Dog.
I was about to say that.
Really?
Yeah, she played Buster.
Who's Buster?
Buster.
Buster
She must have had a
Scruggs.
smaller role. Yeah.
Anyways, she did great
Yeah.
too. I was surprised for a movie called Ginger and Rosa. I thought it was going to switch between the two of them, like multiple times, but we don't ever really get to hear Rosa from Rosa's point of view.
Who cares?
We just know that
She sucks.
she's into church and sleeping with her friend's father. And that's all we really get from her. And she's so awful towards her mother.
Yeah.
In that last scene saying, like, I didn't even notice you were my mom.
Oh,
Like,
that
woo.
smack though. That had to be real smack. I mean, it sounded so good. It looked amazing.
Which one's better, that slap or the Ron Weasley's mom against Bellatrix Lestrange in Harry Potter?
Both involve redheads in the scene, so
Yeah, fiery red.
I would say the Rosa one, just because she fucking needed to be slapped. I really wanted that so bad, and I don't care about Harry Potter that much.
Oh, hold on.
Anyways,
If Harry Potter was an
On that
A24
note-
film, you would.
Yes.
On that note, and to avoid all topics of Harry Potter, especially when I'm hosting this episode, we've had a lot of thoughtful things that we said just moments ago. So, thinking back on that, I'd like to give our final A24 rating system. and I'll let whoever speaks first go first. Give me your rating.
Blaze, good job.
I'll go first.
Blazes!
All right. So my overall thoughts was way better than the last movie we saw.
Yeah.
So definitely a step up in everything from cinematography to the soundtrack. The acting was phenomenal by basically everyone. And it definitely touched on some pretty heavy themes in pretty artful, stylistic way. So when I look at an A24 movie, this kind of fits the mold way more than Charles Swan did. So that being said, I did think it was actually a little short. I wish they would have strung it out a little bit more, let the plot breathe a little bit more. If it would have been closer to 2 hours, I think it would have been a better movie. So that being said, like I said, I don't think I'm going to remember this movie, and I don't think I'm going to watch it again. It left disgust in my mouth towards Roland and the other characters. Like I said, the ending was just too ambiguous to me to ever really get closure on the film. So I'm going to give it a solid C24. It's right in the wheelhouse of what A24 stands for, at least in my opinion. And it's a really exemplary film for what the production company does. So C24, good, not great. Probably wouldn't watch it again, though, either.
Yeah. I think I'm gonna give it a B24. I looked at the other films that Sally
Highest
Potter
rated
did,
yet.
and she hasn't really had many successful films. And I think this one, it must have hit really close to home for her. And I think this film is just so beautifully directed. It's poetic. You could tell just, from our conversation, there are so many different levels to this film that you can pick apart. And the acting really makes it that way, too. And I feel like the characters were extremely thought out. Even though Rosa wasn't a main character, we didn't explore her as much. I think we got the general vibe of her from her friend Ginger. And I don't know. Overall, I think this was a very powerful and good film. And B24 for me, not, the best A24 film I've ever seen, but it's, it was surprisingly, I really liked it. After we just watched Charles Swan, that that was such a crappy movie. Maybe I'm just giving this a even better rating because I just watched such a crappy movie. But
That's probably.
But either
true.
way,
That's probably
I
true.
still really enjoyed this movie. So B24 for me.
Kevin, let's hear from you.
So as a newbie in the world of indie films, and especially A24, this was definitely a breath of fresh air coming in from the last one. I really did enjoy this movie, but at its core, it did feel very indie, with its long stills of thousand-yard stares, the empty rooms, some of the things that you kind of attribute to indie films. It definitely had those elements, but it also had an A-list cast of former Oscar winners and all of the other things that kind of reminded you that there was still some high production value to it. I absolutely love the soundtrack. I touched on it earlier, and even the last song as the credits were rolling is The Man I Love by Thelonious Monk, and that's just another addition to all of the other great jazz standards that are throughout this entire film. Like Eric touched on, we could continue to talk about this for another hour as far as all of the nuance and key points that are throughout this whole thing. I think they did a really great job of touching on religion and war, growing up in wartime and things that the viewer not necessarily has a lot of experience with, but feels that they can relate to by the end of the film. I really did enjoy the way the characters were developed, and they filled a 90-minute space in an excellent amount of time. I also give this a B24, just because it really did knock all the boxes for me, and it makes me excited to see what the rest of this production company brings out, if these are the movies that they're trying to bring out to the public. So, yeah, let's go. I really enjoyed it.
And I don't know if this is a coincidence. B-24 bombers were, airplanes during World War II.
Wow, look at you.
So, going full circle here.
Speaking of fun facts, did you know that this is the first PG-13 movie and the only non-rated R movie that A24 has done up until literally last month?
Wait, seriously?
Seriously.
Wow.
Yeah, I saw it as like a little tidbit, and I looked it up, and as far as I could tell, I did not click through all 111 of them, but fuck, I looked it, and they're like all rated R, all the way up until literally last year when the Apple TV movie The Sky Is Everywhere came out, was the only other PG-13 movie that they've done. And then they've also released After Yang, which apparently is a G-rated film. It's a Showtime. I don't know. It's came out March 4th. Obviously, we haven't watched it yet.
It's new.
But
We got 5 years to think about that. So.
yeah, but I like this movie because it made me feel things. I hate this movie because it pissed me off to like no extent. But I feel like A24 is very good at getting that feels. Overall, this is a movie that I enjoyed. I'm glad I watched it, and I enjoyed the experience. But I probably won't recommend it to anyone else, like to like my normal movie going friends. And I'm not gonna go out of my way to watch it again. I'm gonna give this a solid like C plus or C plus 24 rating. I think if it was rated R, it would have gotten a solid B with Christina Hendricks involved, but obviously it's not rated R, and not enough Christina Hendricks, so what are we gonna do?
Your SIM card.
Alright, see yourself out. You had
Thank
one
you.
more.
I enjoyed my time with you folks. You can call me Scarlett from now on.
For audio listeners, he is a redhead.
100%.
Yes.
I was going back and forth with what I think, and I think it's an absolutely wonderful movie. I think that it's shot really well. A lot of it was very, like, painterly, the old wallpaper once Roland moved into the new apartment. It's a beautifully shot film. The acting is wonderful. The story's good, but did anything really make me go, like, whoa, this is blowing my mind. This is super... And yes, there's lots of layers and everything, but when I watch a movie, I like to be, like, big emotions. And this was just a lot of small emotions. So for that reason, and also, like Cole said, it's not something that I'm going to go to my friends and say, like, you gotta see this movie. So a solid C24 from me as well.
Look at us.
Kind of split this time.
What's
There
what's
we
our
go.
next film, folks?
Spring Breakers.
Oh yeah, that's
Yeah.
Blaze's baby.
I think that's going to be a
Volume
divisive film. So
I think it's gonna be
because I've never
extremely-
seen it before.
I've never
I've
seen
never
it.
seen it either.
Really?
You've never seen it? Oh, okay.
Let's go.
I feel like
Let's go.
it's either you love or you hate it. It's not like this film where you can kind of be in the middle. It's like, yeah, there's an up and down to it for sure.
Yeah, Blaze
I'm
quite excited.
You're either gonna get an A or an F24 from you. I really feel like depending.
Really?
There's gonna be no C24s on this movie. You're either gonna be like me and be all about it, or I don't know, be like my grandma and hate it. I don't know.
It does take place in Florida, and Blaze lives in Florida, so it's pretty much about his life.
Yeah.
So
Hey,
I'm excited. I like a divisive film like that. Divisive anything. No middle ground ever. That's the worst.
DeFranco kills that movie, but we'll
just
talk about
James
that next
Franco, not DeFranco.
week. No, he's the Franco.
Okay, I thought you said James DeFranco or DeFranco.
DeFranco.
No, I was being facetious. Never.
Franco.
James Franco's the worst of the brothers anyhow. Everyone knows that.
Anyway.
That's what we learned.
I mean, the other one's banging.
We can discuss that more next week
Alison
for sure.
Brie.
Yep,
Very
we'll see.
absolutely. Next time.
When I host-
A24 on the rocks.
That's right.
This is gonna be a train wreck. It's not gonna go well with Blaze hosting, guys. I'm just letting everyone know.
Alright, good night, world.
A24.